Welcome back to the How We Can Heal podcast. Today, our guest is Dr. Thema Bryant. Dr. Thema Bryant is a psychologist, author, professor, sacred artist, and minister who's leading the way in creating healthy relationships, healing traumas, and overcoming stress and oppression. She completed her doctorate in clinical psychology at Duke University and her postdoctoral training at Harvard Medical Center's Victims of Violence program, and is currently a tenured professor of psychology in the Graduate School of Education and Psychology at Pepperdine University, where she directs the Culture and Trauma Research Laboratory. Dr. Thema has received countless accolades and awards, including the 2013 American Psychological Association Award for Distinguished Early Career Contributions to Psychology in the Public Interest. And in 2023, she received the Silverman Lifetime Achievement Award for Social Justice in Psychology. Among her many leadership positions, she served as president of the American Psychological Association in 2023. Dr. Thema has written many books, most recently, Matters of the Heart, which encourages readers to build authentic and fulfilling relationships with themselves and the people in their lives. Today, we talk about creating lasting positive change within the field of psychology. Dr. Thema shares how embracing our whole selves can bring healing, and how key principles of decolonial and liberation psychology can help us address harm and promote healing across contexts. She shares tools, stories, and reminds us of the ways in which hope is at the foundation of all mental health work. I'm beyond thrilled to share this conversation with you today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Thema Bryant to the show. The more you learn about trauma, the more you see it everywhere. It's a superpower to see it, and it's also necessary to see beyond it. This fall, I'm offering a new class, Freedom from Trauma. In it, I'll describe why it's essential for us to identify trauma and how we can approach healing in a way that we don't end up swimming in it. You'll learn simple, not always easy, perspective and practices to help you move out of the trauma vortex and stand in something stronger and more powerful than the impacts of harm. I'm looking forward to sharing what I know with you in this new way. Visit howwecanheal.com/freedom from trauma to register for the training. Dr. Thema Bryant, I'm so excited to have you on the How We Can Heal podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
So I saw your plenary at the ISSTD conference and I was blown away by it, thought everyone needs to hear this. And of course, we can't repeat all of that now. But I'm curious for you with all of the work that you're doing. I see you on social media. You've been president of APA and other organizations. You are out there. You are a force for joy and love and authenticity and connection and all these beautiful things. And I feel like we all need that all the time. And we really need it right now.
Yes.
So I'm wondering for you, what's felt the most alive in your work lately? What are the ideas, the thoughts, the conversations that feel most alive for you right now?
Yeah, what I am really thrilled about in this season is the integration of the different aspects of my work and the different aspects of my life. So I'm an artistic person, I'm a spiritual person, of course, a mental health person. And in earlier seasons of my life, those were very kind of separate communities.
Yeah.
So, I would spend time with creatives. I would spend time with people of faith. I would spend time with mental health professionals and, can speak each of those languages very comfortably and fluently. But it has been a beautiful journey of merging all of that and being present with all of that at the same time. And seeing the ripple effects of that. One, most of us are multi-layered. And so it becomes kind of contagious and comforting when we raise these different aspects of ourselves. Then people can join in and say, like, me too, right? Or
Yeah.
this is my art, or this is my faith walk. And I'm excited about not being segregated within myself and with other people, but to be inviting for us to engage with our whole selves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when we do that, I've heard you mention people coming up and whispering things to you. Like,
Right. It's so lovely because, we have directly and indirectly been given the message that we have to leave ourselves in the margins.
yes.
And what I have found is the more we show up authentically, instead of that being a closed door for other people, it becomes an invitation. When I was president of the American Psychological Association, one of the days of the convention, we invited people to wear attire or pins or jewelry that represented some aspect of their identity. And I remember I was so moved by one of our Jewish colleagues who shared that convention was her first time wearing the Star of David to convention to feel safe enough to be present in who she is. And, that's what it's about. I think people's fear is that if I announce that and I have on African attire, then everyone else will feel somehow suppressed or silenced or not welcomed. But like we all get to be the fullness of who we are, whatever that is.
Yeah. And it can give encouragement, right? I was
Yeah.
going to say permission, but there's like a, I don't know, false sense of
Mhm.
separation and power in that,
Yeah.
right? But it can just give encouragement of, hey,
Hmm.
here's who I am. And then
Right.
someone who's maybe tucked away this way or that way can go,
Right.
oh, me too in this other way, right?
Yes. Yes. It's beautiful.
You're teaching in a school of education, right?
Yeah. Well, it's
I'm
education and psychology. It's a combined department.
I'm curious too about that integration with psychology and education, because I feel like what you're doing is taking all the depth of the clinical awareness and work and then just putting it out in books and in
Yeah.
talks. So everybody take this, like run
Right.
with it, take what
Yeah.
resonates, keep it going, bring it to
Right.
therapy, bring it wherever you're going. But
That's great.
there's something about this education element of psychology
Hmm.
that also feels really important right now.
Right. Part of it reflects that model of decolonial or liberation psychology, which is for us not to be elitist with our knowledge or information, that it's not just for the academy, to the few who can subscribe to these journals or even understand our jargon, that it is not just for those who have the financial means or access to therapy, but how do we share our science? And so for me, great ways to share it are the books, social media, the podcasts, and to make it accessible and usable. To me, there's liberation in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And your talk at the ISSTD, you talked about decolonial psychology and you focused really on liberation psychology. So I
Yeah.
want to break those down a little bit for listeners. Some people are familiar, some people might not be.
Yeah.
You define decolonial psychology as deconstructing the harmful impacts of
Hmm.
colonialism
Hmm.
so that we can see the truth of the harm that's happened.
That's right.
Is there anything more you want to say about that? Because then I want to
Yeah.
dive full into liberation psychology.
Yes, yes. So, we can think about what it means to colonize. To colonize is to extract, to take, to
Yes.
dehumanize, demean, to use, right? Not for the benefit of those who are being used, but for the benefit of those in power. And so when we understand what colonialism is, decolonizing should not be controversial,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
for people who are like, I'm against that. You're against what? You're against stopping extraction, right? You're against stealing people's resources. Like, what is it you're against?
Yeah.
And so I brought in that term because I think legally or politically it can make sense to people, but I also mean it in terms of in psychology,
Yeah.
right? So we can have very narrow, arrogant notions about healing,
Mm-hmm.
right? To even think, and I say this as someone who has been to therapy, who provides therapy, who provides training for future therapists, but for us to believe that in all of human history, that
Yeah.
the only way to heal is through psychotherapy is just outrageous,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, therapy is a relatively, in its traditional sense, the way we think about it, it's a relatively young field. And in many countries, there may be like less than five psychologists in the space. So To decolonize is also for us to have humility, cultural humility, to say, yes, we know the things that we know, and there are many, many ways that human beings have not only survived, but thrived and healed and flourished. And so for us to see ourselves in that landscape, not as the only road,
Hmm.
and in a lot of our curriculum. So there's the saying like decolonize the curriculum, that when we name like who are the great minds in psychology,
Yes.
and if that list is only white, straight, able-bodied men, then like we're missing it. So we're not adding other names to do them a favor, right? It's not tokenism. It is like the richness, the wealth of the field, that if you really want to be of service to the world, then we want a psychology that's informed by the world.
Yeah.
And many times those readings, that literature has not been mandated nor amplified or highlighted. And so then we are, I call it half healing.
Yeah.
It's not that these things that are highlighted don't work at all. It's just they're not the only way.
Hmm.
And so we want to prepare people to have like a full toolkit of all of the different rich ways that we can go about this healing work.
Yeah, it's so important that you mentioned people have been healing throughout
Yes.
time and in so many ways. And oftentimes new modalities come up, and then people go, oh, that's kind of like what people have been doing for a long time over here. And it's
Yes.
like what people have been doing for
Yes.
a long time over there. And
Yes.
sometimes there's a connection or a nod to it, but not always.
Hmm.
And I always felt like, man, I wish I could just live in a small group of people and just be the person in the corner over here that people came to talk to
Yeah.
when they were upset. Like, I don't need to have an office. I don't need to run a
Right.
business. I just kind of want to
Yeah.
be that person that
Right.
people trust and look
Mhm.
to in a moment where they need help. And so that
Yes.
becomes like, oh, now you're a psychotherapist, right? Now you're a
Right.
mental health
Right.
professional, and people look you up
Yeah.
online and they watch a
Mhm.
video of you, and then they
Yes.
maybe show up in your office. And to me, that actually feels more detached. Like I
Hmm.
long for more of that
Right.
connection that I think
Hmm. To
as
actually be
humanity has
present in
grown.
our community.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way we're trained, it's like a bad thing that like you might run into somebody in a store, right? Like, oh no, they
Yeah.
saw me.
Oh my goodness.
Right,
What do
right.
I
What are
say?
we gonna do? Versus, I remember one of my first positions after I graduated was at Princeton University in the student health services, but particularly a program called SHARE to address sexual assault and partner abuse and harassment based on sexual orientation. And I just remember like the more campus events I went to, the better,
Mm,
because then people see you just being human and are like, oh, I think that's someone I could talk to.
yeah.
And so for us not like running and hiding that we only exist in these four walls, but to be approachable and accessible.
Yeah. It's much more the humane and the human side,
Yeah.
right? And there's like a clinical scientific side. And
Mhm.
I've heard you talk about this like, well, yeah, we want to be informed by science,
Mhm.
100%. And we don't want to be stifled by it. Like
Yes.
we're full humans, just like you said
Right.
earlier, integrating all these parts, bringing your voice,
Yeah.
bringing song, bringing dance, bringing
Right.
sexuality, and not feeling like we have to tuck it
Yeah.
away.
I was telling students in my classes past semester, you are the secret sauce,
Yes.
right? So,
Yes.
like, we're going to teach you these models, these interventions. There are some sentences or scripts you might remember, but like all of that has to wash through the authenticity of yourself.
Hmm.
Because we know the big predictor in terms of what's helpful is the relationship. And people don't build relationship just based on your techniques.
Yeah.
They're building relationship based on your personhood.
Yeah.
So like be present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just AI telling you to say more about that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
I heard recently, I know this is a whole other topic, but I heard recently someone say that they were studying some mental health AI and there were big problems with some of them. But one of the funny problems was that it brought it back to the mother way too much. It was like, tell me more about your mother. What did your mother say to you? So, yeah, the
Right. And some
humanity,
things have not changed, blaming and shaming women.
right? Yeah. So let's talk a bit about liberation psychology.
Yes.
And maybe we could talk about, feminism in there too, because
Yeah.
you just brought that up. And there's a lot going on with being a
Right.
woman in the world, being a parent in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But liberation psychology, as you described it in the lecture I
Mm-hmm.
attended, you were talking about it as a roadmap, right? Like, where are we going? Okay, so we
Mm-hmm.
look back and we give a nod, we acknowledge the harm of colonialism, past and present. We look at
Mm-hmm.
that, we see it for
Mm-hmm.
what it is. That's a very important and helpful step.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a word you used, it was like a bird flying forward and looking back.
Sankofa.
Sankofa.
Yes. That's beautiful. So, Sankofa is a West African symbol, a bird flying forward and looking back. And the idea is as we progress, we don't forget those who are still coming up behind us so that we can create the way for them so we can meet people where they are. And so with decolonial work, as you mentioned, we're deconstructing, and some people have critiqued that, like, well, that still centers colonialism, right?
Mhm.
So, the partner to that is liberation, which is what are we building?
Yeah.
Right? We don't want to only center what is wrong, but to get a vision for, what would it look like for me as an individual to be free? What would it look like for the members of my family to be free? What would it look like for members of my community to be free? And what would it look like for people who don't mirror my reflection to be free?
Yeah.
Because sometimes what we have gotten into is people want freedom for themselves, but no one else, which is just privilege, right? It's not
Mm.
real. Liberation is interwoven, it is collective, it cannot be on the backs of other people's bondage. And so for us to think through what that looks like, what that feels like, and to help facilitate that process, which shows up in many, many different ways. We can think about post-traumatic growth, we can think about positive psychology, that we are not only focused on symptom cessation or distress reduction, but what will it look like for people to live fully, freely, abundantly,
Mm.
and then to go about actively doing that work to co-create it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we look back, we acknowledge the harm that's been done, that is still having an impact. We
Mhm.
also acknowledge the journey, like you said, folks who are maybe just picking up on, oh, I have
Mhm.
experienced trauma. What is
Yeah,
this? And starting to unpack it.
right.
And then we continue to look forward and carry forward.
Hmm.
When you think about liberation psychology, what vision comes to mind for you of where the field could go, the
Hmm.
field of mental health in however many handful of years? What would you like it to look like?
Yeah. I would love us to embody the thing that we're supposedly facilitating.
Right? Right?
Right? To not be these like stressed out mental health professionals, angry, aggressive, divisive, irritable, shut down. I would like us to actually be well. And many of us, whether we can think about clinics we've worked in, research labs we've worked in, faculties we've served on, have encountered a lot of people who, as a result of self-erasure, self-neglect, are actually not doing well.
Yeah.
And, I think for our students and early career people, I named that for them because I can remember how it's startling. Because I think when I went into the field, you just have I had an assumption that people who chose to do this work would have done some work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That you weren't just like reading those articles for other people, but to
Right.
have like some self-awareness and insight. So, because I have degrees both in psychology and in religion and spirituality, I'm always struck by going to conferences that are either faith-based or psychology-based and it feeling so tight and heavy. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, what could we possibly really be doing in the world when we are so undone ourselves?
Yeah.
So that's a part of what my hope is, and also for us to release this notion that it's just all about the individual,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we think that that's like honoring our field, right? If you talk about anything besides the individual, people will say, "Oh, you're like sociology, or you're social work, or you're political science." And it's to be unaware, especially in this year we're in, to not be aware that the outside affects the inside,
Yeah.
it's just unbelievable.
Right.
So I would love us as a field to experience and encourage healing and wellness for ourselves. And I, have visited a number of programs where students are told the importance of self-care, but then are given a structure that does not allow for it,
Oh, yeah.
and are penalized if they dare try to set a boundary.
Yeah.
I mean, our system is very broken. Our internship and training system, just the fact that it is routine, that people who have faced the most devastation are the most likely to get people who are untrained.
Yeah.
It's already like
Yeah.
this is a broken system,
Yeah.
that the people who are the highest functioning and therefore maybe have more access to resources get the most experienced of us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To and so we have a lot of work to do. The American Psychological Association passed guidelines for the ethical treatment of graduate students. I
Yes.
think that that was controversial, that like some people were fighting against that. It's like, what is happening? So we have both our internal wellness to attend to, our systems to remake and recreate, and to train people to be attentive to the bi-directional relationship between us and the world in which we live. And that includes, training around policy and advocacy,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. There's so many layers to that
Mhm.
you're speaking to and weaving together. There's the exploitation of students, right? And we were just talking about colonialism and the
Yeah.
exploitation there and the harm done there. And the fact that people are pushing back towards the ethical treatment of students
Ah,
speaks volumes, right? Like,
yes.
why would we not?
Right.
And I've actually known people who've been in programs that felt traumatic and
Yeah.
toxic. I've taught yoga for a number of years, and
Mhm.
people often ask me about when people get triggered in a yoga room and assume it's going to look a certain way, like
Mhm.
someone's going to be, really jittery.
Mhm.
One of the most visibly dysregulated people who's ever
Mhm.
shown up in a public yoga class of mine in a studio.
Mhm.
I have all the ways I worked with it. I stood really grounded right next to them. I
Mhm.
softly checked in a supportive way, just let them have their process, tried to manage the rest of the room because people were distracted, trying to keep the
Mhm.
focus. They came up after the class and said, "Thank you so much. I needed that so much today. I was just so traumatized by my psychology program." Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
wow.
So,
Wow.
and I've
Mm.
taught in jails and prisons and
Mhm. Mm.
community programs all over the
Yes.
world. And
Yes.
that's
And
the,
not seeing that in the nervous system.
and not seeing someone
Mm.
presenting in
Mhm.
that much visible dysregulation. So,
Mhm.
it's a one person story, but it's
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
interesting that, and I think important that you're
Yeah.
pointing out, we need to model this. We need to
Yes.
integrate
Yes.
this.
And the thing is, in the story you told, yes, it's N of one, but if you told that to any group of graduate students, they wouldn't be shocked,
No, yeah,
right? They wouldn't be like, oh, what were they mad? What were they distressed about? Right?
right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
they're working hard, they're going to school,
Yeah.
they're not getting paid, they're paying a lot of money, all kinds of, and you're folding in so many layers, which I think this is really important. And I was always more attracted to like integrative programs because
Mhm.
even when you're doing like a psychology experiment on rats, you're looking at how the environment impacts them. So, like, if
Yes.
we're not looking at how the environment
Right.
impacts everyone else, I think we
Yeah.
got a problem.
Absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
gotta take a
I
look
say,
at
that
that.
we can ask these super personal questions
Yes.
about people's sexuality, about their drug use, all of these things. And then if you say to ask about stereotype or harassment or stigma, then they'll say, oh no, that's political. I don't want to be political. Are you
Mm.
kidding? Like that's political. Your silence is political.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So folding in awareness of economics,
Mhm.
of context,
Yeah.
all the
On
different
all the
layers.
different layers, because it shows up in all of our systems. Marginalization shows up, and now, especially, heart goes out to our researchers
Yeah,
who are being given this list of words that the federal government doesn't want to fund.
yeah,
And to see, like for those who weren't in an uproar that race was on the list, to see trauma on the list,
right.
right? Victims is on the list of things they don't want to fund.
Yeah,
So this has caused people who solely identified as scientists to say, oh, I actually have a political agenda.
yeah,
The agenda is to be able to do this work for the betterment of society, to be able to enhance people's lives. So, even if I have been silent before, this silence is not going to protect the field.
yeah. So what would you say to someone who's struggling to find their voice in that?
Yeah, I would say that, one, the term in liberation psychology is resistance. So, for us to resist oppression, resist discrimination, resist marginalization, resist dehumanization, and there are multiple ways to do that because oppression is interdisciplinary. It attacks us on all different levels. So the resistance is on all different levels. And so then you find what is the pathway that aligns with you, that matches maybe your sphere of influence, that matches your personality.
Yeah,
There are, different ways that we can do that. So some people will go out marching with signs, and you'll see, as I was saying, sometimes now more the marches, you'll see scientists, out there holding their signs, or the APA releasing statements to say this action that's being taken goes against the science that we know.
yeah,
So it can be these kind of public statements. It can also be, of course, with our voting, to not only on a federal level, on a local level, and organizationally to put people in positions of power who acknowledge context and who embody a valuing of humanity, right? Across identities. So we can also think about one of the things I appreciate are people in the field who are actually running for office,
yeah.
right? We have information that not everyone can access or wouldn't even know to look for. In Los Angeles, where I live, they have something called neighborhood councils, and the neighborhood council is the mediator between the community and city council. And so a couple years after I moved out here, I decided to run for the neighborhood council, and the seat that they had open was on education. And so, I did my research because you have to make a speech before the election. So I went on a website. The website is called Great Schools, and it rates all the schools on a scale 1 to 10 based on these different criteria. And so the neighborhood that I was living in, there was no school in our neighborhood that had over a 4. If you go a couple blocks down the road to like our neighboring community, they have 8s and higher.
Mm,
And so, you know, I say that to start my statement about how we need to, support our schools, address our schools. But I didn't even get to the solution because the committee, this is the people who are already on neighborhood council, interrupted me because they wanted to know where did I get those numbers from.
mm,
How are you our neighborhood leaders and you don't know where the data is,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
of course they can't advocate for us because you don't even know that we're in like this is a crisis,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I say that to say, as mental health professionals, whether psychologists or other mental health professionals, we get trained in a skill set that can benefit our communities. Whether you want to be the front person or whether you're going to provide research to city council that will help inform their decision making. So there are all different ways for us to engage.
There's something integrative in that modeling that you're describing too, of branching out across disciplines, of building relationships. No one of us is able to do it alone, obviously. And so building relationships, but also stretching out, especially if someone finds themselves in the comfort of the small four walls,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yes.
just putting a toe out first
Right.
and then your
Right.
whole arm and leg. And
Yes. I'll
mm,
say along those lines, one of the things I, provide training for our students in is one, to think about getting published, and then two, in your publication, to have policy implications.
yes,
Right? Because
yes.
some people are like, oh, I don't want to go to city council. That's fine. But to recognize, even if my article is a case study, right, of a client, like what are the implications for that for clients who may have a similar experience? So I feel like that's a way, in terms of people in their comfort zone, that we
Mhm.
can still be true to our science, or however people want to think about that, but to consider the ripple effects of what you have found is helpful.
Yes. I remember even 20 plus years ago looking at graduate programs and having a hard time finding ones that felt like it was going to connect out more into the community or into creating some kind of change, and finding ones that were like social innovation and change, and then looking and being like, this is all math. Like, yeah, I could do some of that, but that's
Right,
all I
right.
want to do, right? I don't just want
Yeah,
to build graphs. Like, I want to
right.
build relationships, right? So where
Yeah.
do I find that? And so it's encouraging to think about just writing policy implications or even the way we
Hmm.
design studies, right? I mean,
Yes.
we're doing research where we looked at programs that were super successful and
Hmm.
pulled out qualitative data, like what's working well here. Then
Hmm.
funders, anyone who's looking at how do I maximize my input in this community, like look for these, mentorship relationships and look for this unique fit and look for
Hmm.
these themes that we're seeing that are helping people be successful. So we can do this in research.
Yeah.
We can stretch out and build relationships, maybe even run for office ourselves. And then I feel like there's this time that we're in where we're hopefully building this humanitarian healing momentum,
Hmm.
spreading love and education and dignity and all these things. And so, what do we do in the meantime when we feel like maybe larger forces of power don't have our back, or it can feel like the difference between biking with the wind behind you and biking
Hmm.
with the wind in front of you. So
Yes.
I'm wondering if you ever feel that way, or
Yeah.
what
Oh, all the time.
yeah. I mean, it seems like you are joyfully riding your bike and ringing the bell every day. So I want to celebrate that. And yeah, what do we
Yeah.
do when it just feels hard to be standing up for something that might feel obvious, like ethical
Right.
treatment of graduate students,
Yes.
ethical treatment of
Yeah.
people and people getting support that they need?
Right, right. One of the key things I'll say is finding your kindred spirits,
Yeah.
because it can, especially if the persons who are holding a lot of power are pushing a different agenda, you can feel alone or powerless. And so finding like-minded people is such a gift. So
Mm.
whether that is in your workplace, and again, this can be globally, federally, or even locally. I think about times I've worked places that were not a healthy workplace, and just having like someone in the room I could catch eyes with,
Oh yeah.
right?
Hmm.
It makes all the difference. Like we're going to talk afterwards, but I need to know like someone else is seeing like what is happening here.
Yes.
So that, social support, community support makes a big difference. And then, remembering history, that this is not the first time that the ideas and the values we have not been reflected in leadership.
Yeah.
And so, part of it, I love historians to learn from history,
Yeah.
right? When people may not be exactly the same, but when people faced a parallel circumstance, how did they navigate? How did they take care of themselves? How did they work toward change collectively and strategically? So, learning from history. And then I'll say from a spiritual perspective, and even if someone is atheist or agnostic, I believe the mental health field is rooted in a faith that things can be better than they are right now.
Yeah.
And that's why why we do the research, why we do the practice, why we're teaching, is it's a hope,
Yeah.
right? And some have talked about it as a radical hope, and it's radical when it's in the face of like everything that's saying that's not possible,
Yeah.
right? So to nourish and feed our spirits so that we can remember why we're here and what we're doing. And then I think, one of the skills that therapists teach that can be very helpful for us is learning how to count the small wins
Yeah.
because, sometimes it's like finish line or bust, right? That things can happen that are actually good, but our eyes are so focused on, but this and this and this. And, it's not that I want to ignore that, but if that's the only thing that is praiseworthy, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to see the small wins along the way that help to encourage us.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can build momentum from the
Hmm.
small wins. So we can
Yeah.
also just appreciate our
Yeah.
day-to-day life, right?
Yes.
Knowing that we're doing something that feels meaningful and
Right.
not waiting for
Yeah.
some ultimate perfection
Hmm.
or some,
Hmm.
point of peaceful
Yeah.
manifestation for everyone. It's
Right.
yes, we're all interconnected. Yes, there's a lot going on. And yes, you can
Hmm.
enjoy eating that donut, or you
Right.
can
Yes.
appreciate making a beautiful quinoa salad,
Right.
or you can
Right.
say, hey, I did that talk today and people
Uh-huh.
were really engaged and there's a
Right.
lot of love in that room. And that was,
Yeah. And that's the thing, the scholars in post-traumatic growth talk about how growth and despair can coexist.
yes,
Right? Because there's
yes,
a lot going on. So you can say, as it relates to that, my heart breaks for that.
yeah,
I'm celebrating my kid who made it on honor roll, or,
yes,
whatever those small wins are to give ourselves space and permission for that.
yes. I've heard you say culture is medicine, and I'm just aware of how many different layers there are to culture, right? We're talking
Mhm.
about culture within the mental health field, we're talking about culture within the US and the larger world.
Mhm.
What are some ways that you've seen culture be really healing for people?
Yeah, yeah. So, a big part of culture is the arts. And
Yeah.
I mentioned I love the arts. So it can be healing to sing, healing to hear and write poetry, healing to dance. And so I love embodied healing, somatic healing,
Mm,
moving our bodies. So both art production and art appreciation, right? That
yeah.
even if you're not the artist, seeing artwork or hearing it, is therapeutic, right?
Mm,
It can be very healing. It is self-expression, community expression, being seen, being heard, being known, being valued. I remember I was at a poetry coffee house in Boston. I used to live in Boston for my internship and postdoc.
mhm.
And I shared whatever piece I shared that week, and someone came up to me afterwards and said, your poems feel like church. And I said, that's good. That's what it's meant to be, right? You got
Yes.
3 minutes to shift an environment, right?
Yeah.
What is it you want to convey in that 3 minutes? And so, yeah, so art as a cultural reflection, cultural values can also be medicinal when they are intentional as it relates to humanity. One of the cultural values can be the collective,
Mm,
right? That we're interwoven, that we're interrelated, that our lives affect other people's lives. And so this sense of, that I matter. And just by being a member of this community, there are, people who care about me, who care about my well-being. Some of us think about that as chosen family. For some, it's like our cultural identity family. To again have that sense of support
yeah.
can be very helpful. And, so we can think about cultural values, cultural arts, and then community gathering,
Mm,
right? Being present with each other, because sometimes when we're suffering, we isolate.
yeah.
And so if we can remember the gift that can happen in each other's presence,
Mm,
scientifically, we can talk about that as co-regulation,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
The ways that some people can just soothe our nervous system by us being present, even if we don't say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the colleagues I refer to the most, the ones that when I see them, I'm just like,
All right.
thank you for existing. We
Yes.
don't have to talk
Yes.
about anything.
Oh,
We
feels
can go
good.
for a
Yep.
walk or we can do nothing. And I have this vision as you're talking of almost like a summer camp kind of environment, like even for adults. So
Yeah.
many of us, I'm very particular with where and how I get my news, but I feel like as adults, the entertainment is TV or news or going online for those things. And like, what if it were dancing with your neighbors? What if it were even just like playing music or like
Yeah.
live music every night, like if you
Yes.
do this as special occasions, I'm gonna go to a
Right.
concert or this or that, but what if the everyday habit
Yeah.
were singing? What if
Uh-huh.
everyday habit were dancing? And so I think
Yeah.
all of us, I have to remind myself because I can get all up in my head, like, oh,
Hmm.
stop, just play some music. Like,
Right. Yes.
oh, like just
So true. I remember I was blessed to go to a psychology conference in Puerto Rico, and in the evenings, just was no special occasions. They just had like outdoor music.
yes,
And so, you just like listen to the music and dance. Oh, I was going for broke, just dancing, dancing.
I
And
love it.
it's healing. It's beautiful.
It is. And I've seen that even at psychology conferences, even ISSD has had bands and
Yes.
dancing at the end. It's like, okay,
Oh, I
this is a
love
step
it.
in the right direction for sure.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right, right. Well, we had flash mobs at the APA convention when I was president. My daughter did the choreography, and people are like, "Are we dancing at APA?" Yes,
Yes, we are.
yes,
Yes.
yes, we are.
Yes. Let's keep that going too.
Right, right.
So you mentioned and you talk a lot about community care and self-care, not falling into this false dichotomy like we have to pick
Hmm.
one or the other. We are interwoven. We are also individual humans. Like let's have a bubble bath and get
Yes,
paid maternity leave and
yes,
like
all
have
the
a walk
way.
with a friend and all the layers, right? Like we
Right.
don't have to just pick one. And I know your book, you wrote Homecoming first and
Hmm.
Matters of the Heart second. And it seems that there's that like relational progression, right? Coming
Yes,
home to yourself.
right.
And I saw a clip of you, I think it was from a while back, where you were like, let me just give some dating advice for those people in the crowd. Show up as yourself from day one, right? Like just let them
Right.
know if you don't make
Yes,
it, then you don't, that's not, don't pretend like you do,
that's it.
right?
Yeah.
Then
Then
just
we
bait and
can
switch.
save a lot of time,
Save a
right?
lot of
It's be
time by being
real, and
honest.
then you can find who aligns, who matches with that.
Yeah.
So true. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're often pretending, and I say that in a non-shaming way
Yeah.
because we're taught that. We observe that you get treated differently if you say the things people want to hear, or if
Yeah.
you dress the way people say you're supposed, if you follow these rules, you may be rewarded but not fulfilled.
Yes. So choosing that fulfillment, choosing
Yeah,
that honesty, and it's not like
yeah,
any of us is this one single
right.
entity being that's static. Like we can
Hmm.
evolve and change for sure, but the intention to honor ourselves
Yeah,
first, to come home to ourselves
right.
first, or
Yeah.
have that as an anchor, and then to be in relationship. And I'm just aware as we're talking, like there's so the layers of this. It's like I'm part Ukrainian and they make these beautiful eggs, the Easter eggs that
Mhm.
layer out, right? The little
Ah,
there's one inside, another one inside, another one
mhm,
inside. And if we go down to okay, the individual human, and then in
mhm,
relationship and in family and in community and in,
mhm.
you know, country and in world, there's just
Yes.
these layers of things interacting when we talk about healing, when we talk about
Hmm.
hope for positive change.
Hmm.
So I'm curious, since your last book, Matters of the Heart, came out, what are some conversations that are happening at that level around healing, attachment or healing in relationship?
Yeah. One of the chapters that really resonates with people is releasing people who don't love you.
Mm,
And I think, many people struggle with that. They're just hoping that they can win people over, that they can convince them, or that if they love them hard enough and long enough, that, somehow things will turn around. And so the importance of mutual reciprocal relationships. And whether it's romantic or family or friendship, that when people are not choosing you, to release them by honoring the truth.
Yeah.
They have already made a decision. So you holding on is holding on to nothing, right?
Yeah.
They're not there.
Yeah.
And so that has been an important part of healing. And then another area that has resonated with a lot of people is around harshness. Some of us grew up in difficult circumstances, so, can be in warrior mode, can be kind of hyper independent, are hyper vigilant. And so to heal, to allow space in our hearts, in our bodies, in our lives for gentleness.
Yes.
And that gentleness is not weakness.
Yeah.
So that requires some unlearning.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the gentleness inward with ourselves and the gentleness with others, even when there is an important boundary to set,
Yeah.
even when it's, okay, I'm not feeling like this
Hmm.
person gets me, is on my side, loves me, and
Hmm.
I need to make some space. There are ways to do that
Hmm.
avoidantly. There are
Yeah.
ways to do that confrontationally.
Uh-huh.
There are ways to do that gently. Not to say it's
Hmm.
going to be smooth or perfect, but
Hmm.
might be a little bit less edgy or softer, or have,
Yeah.
less cleanup. Yeah.
Right.
So you mentioned earlier being a woman in the world, or being a parent in the world. I'm also thinking about this letting go when there are kids involved, or kids who are feeling the need to let their parents go.
Mhm.
What would you say to someone who's facing some of those decisions where there's such a strong desire for attachment? It's one thing to say, don't read the comments, right? It's one thing to say, there's always going to be someone out there critiquing your work, or someone who's in a bad mood who wants to
Mhm.
drop a bomb in the comments. Like, and easier to
Mhm.
let that go. But if it's
Mhm.
someone in your family, or someone where there's so much investment.
Yeah. Yeah. So important. And so, I think it's important therapeutically to start from the vantage point of like all of the options being on the table.
Yeah.
Right? So it may be we're going to leave things as they are, and I'm just trying to figure out how to cope more so I don't get so distressed by it, or I stop being disappointed when people continue to be the same way they are. So that may be like the acceptance and the coping strategies. The other end of the spectrum are people who say, for my mental health, or sometimes even for my physical or financial safety, I cannot be in relationship with this person anymore. And so I'm removing them from my life. But then there's a whole area in the middle of that, which is, what would it mean for me to be in relationship with boundaries?
Mm.
Right?
Mhm.
With in relationship with requirements, in relationship with standards. And I especially explore that with people who are suffering with the way things are, but perhaps religiously or culturally or just by personality have removed from the table the possibility of ending the connection, right? Religiously, they may feel like I have to honor my parents and it is a value of mine. So then helping people to think through some curiosities. So for example, let's say your family member or relative doesn't treat you kindly or with respect. Do you really have to spend every weekend at their house?
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? To eat, because even though like that's how we've always done it, everyone goes over all day Saturday, all day Sunday, so ritual or tradition is not a rule. So, let's consider one, the amount of time and the amount of access that we're giving people. And then the times that I am there, you know, what would help it to feel better for me? If there is a member of the family I feel safe with, to ensure that I'm seated next to them. Some of us, you can volunteer to be with the kids. Some families have like the kids' table or the kids' room and say, yep, let me go over with the kids. It's less drama.
Yeah.
Or, I'm gonna come late and leave early. And, I know people are going to talk about me, but that's okay. I just need to reduce my time. And then also you can be explicit with your request of saying, I'm coming, But if someone does this or someone says this, I'm going to take my kids and leave.
Yeah.
So then everybody knows that. And if they willingly still do that, well, then, see you all next year or maybe not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So to give ourselves, because sometimes we feel stuck and think there are no options, and there could be some options.
Yeah. Lots in the middle.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's the cognitive distortion of all or nothing, right? I
Yes.
got to be totally enmeshed in this thing that
Right.
doesn't feel good, or I've got to
Yeah.
leave. And there's boundaries in the middle. And sometimes that's harder, which is why we
Hmm.
go to the extremes, right?
Right.
Yeah. There are so many layers to your work and so many different themes I've seen you touch on that I'm like, oh, there's so much I want to talk about. And we're coming closer to time. Dr. Jennifer Gomez, she introduced you at the ISSTD. I always shout her out. She talks about dream storming,
Yeah.
going to the dream and then just living there for a little while. And then we can pull
Mhm.
some insights into the present. So I'm curious, in your dream storm, into a world where liberation psychology has been so downloaded and implemented, can you imagine a world where resistance is no longer necessary? And what does that world look like?
Yeah. I think there are different forms of resistance,
Yeah.
and I can imagine a world where it is less necessary.
Okay.
But the reason I would still say to have some aspect of it is just in our knowing of human beings.
Yeah.
And so that greed can creep in, those control things can creep in. And the thing that I'm mindful of is, people who have exited religion because they say like it's controlling, and then they have these spiritual groups and the same hierarchy stuff shows
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
They're like, who did you train with in yoga? Or,
Right. Exactly.
so, uh, so I would say I do imagine a world where we can have more ease in our bodies, more ease with each other, more ease in our spirits, where it is not perpetual warfare. And I welcome that. I dream it, but then also working to create it,
Yeah.
right? To make it so. And we can do that. Like all of us can play a role in co-creating a world where we don't just have to be in survival or combat mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you say the resistance is still necessary, part of what I hear in that is intentionality. Part of what I hear in
Hmm.
that is power,
Hmm.
of knowing that whatever is going on outside, you can bring something. And even,
Hmm.
as we're thinking about this, how do we grow into something that feels better for everyone, where there is more ease, where it's safe
Hmm.
to be embodied, where we're not always in fight, flight, freeze, or all these
Yeah.
other reactions? It's like, okay, well, we can have a sense of power and agency, and we
Hmm.
can create and acknowledge the times where we're connected, the times where there's joy.
Hmm.
You mentioned earlier too, having a few people like decolonizing training in psychology.
Hmm.
Can you give a shout out to a few names or theories you would love to see in textbooks and training programs?
Yes, I am super excited. This timing is perfect. I was just co-editor of the new special issue released by the American Psychologist. It was one of my presidential initiatives and just came to press, and it's Decolonial and Liberation Psychologies. So
Nice.
I encourage people to read that special issue. And then there are books actually published by APA, one on liberation psychology, one on decolonial psychology. I also co-edited a book with Lillian Comos Diaz on womanist and mujerista psychologies, so the psychologies of Black women and Latinas. I encourage people to look at the work of Helen Neville around justice and joy,
Mm,
especially as we think about our trauma work. Judith Herman talking about, the ways in which victims define justice, like what does justice look like for people, and then the reclamation of joy.
hmm On that note, the reclamation of joy, what brings you joy today?
Dancing brings me joy today. In fact, this weekend I'll be traveling to visit my father, who's 82. And last year, my mom transitioned. And so I'm excited to still have my dad in the land of the living.
Yes.
And I'll say I still have joy as well about my mom's spirit,
Yes.
that her presence is definitely with me. And I feel that and see that. And I have joy about those who are coming into the field,
Yeah.
who are, our students, our early career folks who are visionary and passionate. And because I do believe in the gift of being intergenerational, I have joy as I think about my mentors in the field, the ways in which they poured into me and continue to pour into me. Such a blessing.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
So where can someone go if they want to learn more and stay connected with you?
Yeah, so my website is drthema.com, DRTHEMA. If folks are on Instagram, I'm there as Dr. Dr. period Thema. The books I want to name, in addition to the hardback and the digital, there's also audiobooks.
Yes.
And I was so excited that they let me read the books myself.
Yes.
And so the books are available. And then, of course, the Homecoming podcast, which is on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes.
Nice. I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Tama.
Thank you.
Can I ask you one more thing?
Yes,
Take
I
it
saw
in
the
if you
face.
gotta
Yeah.
go. When Dr. Gomez introduced you at ISSTD, she said, "Okay, the floor is all yours, Queen." And I was like, "Oh, it's so nice you said that." She's like, "No, there's a story behind it. Do you mind sharing the story?"
Absolutely. So my first name is Tama, and it means queen. And my parents gave me that name. We're African American, and I feel it is such a gift that wherever I go, whether people want to or not, when they say my name, they are honoring me. And I receive that as a treasure that my parents intentionally gave me.
What a beautiful gift.
Yeah.
So, Queen, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tama.
Ah,
So appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with us.
thank you for a beautiful conversation, wonderful questions, and your great heart.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Now, I'd really love to hear from you. What resonated with you in this episode? And what's on your mind and in your heart as we bring this conversation to a close? Email me at info@howwecanheal.com or share your answers and what's been healing for you in the comments on Instagram, where you'll find me at How We Can Heal. Don't forget to go to howwecanheal.com to sign up for email updates as well. You'll also find additional trainings, tons of free resources, and the full transcript of each and every show. If you love the show, please leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, Audible, or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe and keep sharing the shows you love the most with all your friends. Visit howwecanheal.com/podcast to share your thoughts and ideas for the show. I always love hearing from you. Before we wrap up for today, I want to be super clear that this podcast isn't offering prescriptions. It's not advice, nor is it any kind of mental health treatment or diagnosis. Your decisions are in your hands, and I encourage you to consult with any healthcare professionals you may need to support you through your unique path of healing. In addition, everyone's opinion here is their own, and opinions can change. Guests share their thoughts, not that of the host or sponsors. I'd like to thank our guest today and everyone who helps support this podcast directly and indirectly. Alex, thanks for taking care of the babe and taking the fur babies out while I record. Last and never least, I'd like to give a special shout out to my big brother Matt, who passed away in 2002. He wrote this music, and it makes my heart so very happy to share it with you here.